And welcome to Talking Reds from the Anfield Wrap. It's Tuesday. Said this last week, Josh, but Liverpool are still top of the Premier League. You know, sounds, isn't it?
You have to keep saying it, don't you?
I just really like waking up in the morning and Liverpool are top of the Premier League. It's a nice feeling. Sunday morning might be awful.
Oh yeah.
After City have played Fulham. It's still the international break, obviously, which is why Liverpool are still top of the league. England played last night. I know people by and large aren't all that into it, but there's Liverpool relevance to this. We're going to have a brief chat about it. Jordan Henderson came off the bench against Montenegro away, and he got his 50th cap for England. He set up the winner, so the final goal in a 5-0 win for Raheem Sterling. And on the quiet, he's the most senior member of that squad, which I think is really interesting because people might criticise him for, not being Steven Gerrard basically, or England fans might criticise him for not being Frank Lampard because he's not this bombastic, all-action centre mid. He's a very different kind of footballer, and yeah, he's not as good because those two are once in a generation. But he's just sort of over time become an incredibly reliable player first of all, but also the kind of character that obviously various managers want around and in a senior position, and the fact that he's reached this level of achievement with England in a time where they've not been doing particularly well for about 10 or 12 years bar the World Cup, I think is testament to the man that he is as well as the player.
Absolutely, and you only have to see the way that his sort of teammates for England and for Liverpool talk about him in terms of, like you say, the person he is as well as the player. You can just sort of see that he's the absolute consummate professional. I think it was Declan Rice was saying last week about who he'd been surprised by when he came to England training. He said that he'd had some good battles with Eric Dyer, but he said that Jordan Henderson was just someone who lifts the level of everyone, and he's a proper leader on the training pitch. And I think, like you say, that's something you want as a manager. People will question why Jurgen Klopp, but I probably wouldn't say prefers, but why he keeps Jordan Henderson around as his captain, and there's clearly a reason why. And Jurgen Klopp, he's not soft. He's a world-class manager, and he obviously values the sort of influence of Jordan Henderson massively, probably as much as he values that of Virgil van Dijk or Gino Wijnaldum or whoever else you want to put forward to be Liverpool's captain. So I think he completely warrants his place for Liverpool. I think he completely warrants his place for England. He's got a massive role to play for Liverpool now in the sort of dying embers of the season, alongside a few other players, but he's someone who, like you say, has become one of the senior members of this Liverpool squad, has become one of the senior members of the England squad as well, and his influence around the place is going to be massive in for some of them younger lads. You think about sort of Naby Keita and players like that who have probably not really experienced anything like this before in terms of the sort of intensity of this title race, and Jordan Henderson is going to be one of the ones who sort of keeps them all grounded and keeps expectations at a certain level, I think.
The likes of Jadon Sancho and Hudson-Odoi have also spoken about him this week in a positive way. He's been someone who's been very welcoming to them as they've kind of started their fledgling England careers, and it's happened with quite a few Liverpool signings over the past sort of 2 years or so, that when they've been asked about how they've settled in or whatever, they've all just kind of thrown his name in. It's for Keita, he spoke about Mane a lot. Mane was very helpful because they come from the same part of the world, they share a language, that sort of stuff. But he also mentioned Henderson, and so many of them just mentioned Henderson in this kind of almost a throwaway way, but when you add it all together and they're all talking about him, it's clear that regardless of what you think of him on the football pitch, and I'm a fan of his, you're a fan of his, I think anyone who understands the way the team wants to play recognises his importance to what they're trying to do. But regardless of all of that, just the stuff that he's doing off the pitch with the squad members, for the club in terms of its community stuff as well, he's a very different captain to what Steven Gerrard was, obviously, but he's just as valuable, just in different ways.
I think people say he's sort of duty bound as a captain to do those things, but I disagree with that, to be honest. I think there'll be captains throughout football, I guess, not just necessarily English football, that won't do all them things, won't go out the way for their new teammates. They'll just sort of try and lead by example on the football pitch, and I think Jordan Henderson seems to me like the sort of, it says a lot about who he is as a man that he goes out his way and does those things. And it's interesting you mentioned the sort of Steven Gerrard comparisons, because they always seem to sort of linger around, and if you want another Steven Gerrard as your Liverpool captain, then you're probably going to be waiting a lifetime to get someone like him, because they don't come around often. He's literally the perfect player for Liverpool. He's a lad who came up from this area, came a world-class footballer, dragged Liverpool through so many games on some of the biggest stages in the world as well, and he is just is a completely different world to Jordan Henderson. There shouldn't be the comparison there. There doesn't need to be. It's completely unnecessary that that people make that comparison between the two, because Jordan Henderson's an absolutely, is a good captain for Liverpool completely. Steven Gerrard was the absolute perfect player for Liverpool. If you were to make a player, it would be Steven Gerrard. So yeah, there shouldn't be them comparisons anymore. I don't think you need to judge Jordan Henderson on who he is as a person and his own merits, and I think he's an absolutely fantastic person, as we said there, and a good player to boot as well.
I think we have a distorted sense of what a good captain is in this country. And the prime example for me is that John Terry was referred to as captain, he's a legend, while shagging his teammates' wives behind the back. So I'd rather have someone sound like Jordan Henderson by and large, to be honest.
I'd much rather have someone like Jordan Henderson than John Terry.
We've got to talk about the other stuff that was going on in the game as well. Obviously, it's a football match and whatever else, but it ends with the biggest talking point being the racial abuse of various England footballers. So Danny Rose was chanted against late on as he got booked for a foul. Callum Hudson-Odoi was subjected to some stuff as well. Raheem Sterling spoke a lot about it in the aftermath, and a few of them had to in press conferences and things. Firstly, obviously that kind of thing should not be happening in this day and age, and hopefully UEFA come down on them like a ton of bricks. I highly doubt that they will, because they never seem to. But firstly, it's great that the likes of Sterling feel confident enough to outwardly take exception to it. There's obviously a level of support within the squad. I saw some of the stuff that Southgate was saying afterwards. He was very supportive of them, as you would expect him to be, but you can't kind of take this stuff for granted, because you would assume, as I say, that in this day and age it wouldn't even happen. Obviously it still does. So the fact that Sterling especially has kind of taken, I don't want to say responsibility because it shouldn't be his responsibility, but he's outwardly speaking about this sort of stuff, and has been for probably the last sort of 12 to 18 months, and taking exception to it and making people more aware of it is great, because it's very clear when you're watching that match last night what's happening. But there's also loads of different pervasive forms of racism in football in this country as well. Like we shouldn't be grandstanding about this like our game's perfect or our society is perfect. So the fact that him and a few others, lots of the ones that were writing things for the Players Tribune website around the World Cup last year, are openly taking people to task over it is really good.
I think the sort of biggest surprise for me, sort of aside from the racism, because it's almost become not a surprise anymore, which is probably the most shocking thing. But it's how articulate the people who are speaking on these subjects now are about it. Gareth Southgate, I think, was sort of apologising for not having the right words to say last night. But when I read what he was saying, I thought he sort of articulated it perfectly. He talks about the problem of racism in society as a whole, which I think still exists, and how that translates into English football as well as into sort of all forms of European football. Raheem Sterling as well, as since he was racially abused at Chelsea and possibly even before that, he's almost becoming the sort of go-to man on the subject now, because he's sort of showing that maturity, and I think he's able to sort of coach his younger teammates through that experience. It seems like Callum Hudson-Odoi is making his England debut, and he's having his first post-match interview after having a great game for England, and the first question he's being asked is about racism. It's unbelievable, to be honest, that in 2019 we're still talking about these topics and we're still questioning why these things are going on, and something needs to be done. You mentioned UEFA's sanctions, and I think the last time that Danny Rose got racially abused was in Serbia when he was playing for the under-21s, and the sanction that UEFA gave them was less than Nicholas Bendtner's for wearing Paddy Power boxes. So it sort of shows that it was
a small fine and one under-21 game behind closed doors, and it's like, well, what do you think that does to anyone?
It's absolutely
who was there
ridiculous.
doing that?
When your governing body are not coming down on these issues as hard as that, then there needs to be sort of serious questions asked, and hopefully there will be in the aftermath of this. It shouldn't take these things for UEFA and FIFA and the sort of governing bodies to come down hard, but hopefully they've learned the lesson from last time, and then this time it's properly dealt with.
You would hope so, but then I guess that's what you get when your institution is run and worked for by pretty much exclusively middle-aged white fellas who don't understand the gravity of what's going on, don't understand what it is to be abused because you're a minority or whatever else. And also you see that, like, the reaction from our media and stuff. Obviously it's good that people pick up on it, obviously it's good that people say it's disgraceful, but I am certain that the Daily Mail will write another terrible article about Raheem Sterling in the next few weeks, months, years, whatever, and loads of other newspapers will do the same thing. And it's like, well, you can't say, yes, obviously chanting and stuff is a very obvious form of racism, but also these articles that you do about successful young black men taking the piss out of them, or saying that it's, questioning what they're doing with their wealth or what they're doing with their success, is also racism. It might be in a less obvious way, it might be in a less directly aggressive or offensive way, but it's still the same thing. So hopefully something like this happening can have a sort of positive effect in that maybe it gets people who otherwise think that they're all right and they're not doing anything, and these media outlets and whatever, to have a bit of a look at themselves as well, rather than just saying, oh, that's their problem, that's Eastern Europe, or that's this foreign country or whatever else, and actually we look at our society and how we treat people, because it might be different, but it's by no means perfect.
It sort of shows the two-faced nature of tabloid journalism, doesn't it? You've got, you know, great journalists on the Merseyside patch. Dominic King was covering the England game last night, and there's other sort of great writers throughout tabloid newspapers who cover sport in such great detail and so well as well. And then you've got the people who run the sort of celeb or gossip pages.
Oh, what goes on the front page?
Exactly, who'll be writing about Raheem Sterling, you know, going to Greg's in a few weeks' time or something. And you sort of hope it has the ripple effect and the knock-on effect now, where people allow themselves to be introspective about it. And I think we all should be as well. We should be looking at society as a whole and questioning, you know, within ourselves, why does this issue still exist? It shouldn't be like it's just them, they're the racists, so you need to sort of usher them to one side, because it's a problem in society as a whole, like we've said, and everyone needs to sort of look within themselves as to why that is.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about the Reds for a bit now. We're going to look forward to the Tottenham game in just a second, but first of all, big side of Mig has been having a chat in the press, which is unlike him. Well, this season anyway, it's unlike him. You stayed a lot from him.
It's changed his tune, hasn't it?
But he's been talking very glowingly about life at Liverpool this season. He's barely played any footy. Did he only play the Chelsea game in the League Cup?
I think so, yeah.
He played Wolves.
Played Wolves.
So he's played two cup games, that's it. Yeah. And he's been saying how happy he is at Liverpool and all that sort of stuff. If you compare that with what he was doing a few years ago when he was the starting goalkeeper, and saying how terrible he felt and nervous and everything, it's a strange comparison to be making, and it strikes me that maybe he's just decided, I'm on an alright contract here, and maybe if I just kick about a bit I might end up with a Premier League medal or a European Cup medal, and that'll be alright. That's better than me going and playing for Norwich if they get promoted, or whatever his level is now, because it's very hard to tell. He hasn't played football for pretty much 2 years. It's just mad that he's coming out and speaking so positively about his time when he's doing so little. I
sort of wonder whether there's a bit of almost remorse there as well for the way the whole Karius situation went, because he was coming out during his international breaks last season and sort of moaning about his role in the team when he was directly competing with Karius, and it wasn't necessarily that Karius was sort of number one for a great length of time, was it? There was competition. There was back and forth. He was playing Champions League,
Mignolet was playing League.
Exactly, and it sort of felt like to a point that he set Karius up for a fail. And I know people will say that that's maybe harsh and that Karius was not good enough to take his chance when he's in the Liverpool team, and I sort of completely agree with that to some extent. But I feel like Mignolet was adding fuel to the fire and sort of wasn't helping that scenario at all. So for him to be coming out now, and he's come out and praised Alisson this season and said how great it is to sort of be second fiddle to a goalkeeper like him, it all strikes me as a bit disingenuous, to be honest. Like, I don't really fancy Mignolet as a person. He doesn't sort of strike me as, we talk about Jordan Henderson being someone who you class as being a role model of Paul. Mignolet doesn't strike me as that type of person at all, and he's got 2 years left on his contract. I don't think he's got a future at Liverpool, so I'd quite happily see him sold in the summer, to be honest.
Josh isn't going for a pint with Simon Mignolet then? If the offer's there, he's turning you down?
Exclusively not, sorry Sam.
We'll talk quickly about Tottenham. This is one of the biggest league games that me and you have witnessed in our entire lives. I'm so excited, but also terrified, because it has to go well. It has to go well, otherwise it might just feel insurmountable by that point.
It just feels like it's ages away, doesn't it? It's one of these games where it's just going to all of a sudden creep up on you, I think, and I've barely even allowed myself chance to think about it. But then whenever your mind sort of flicks to it, you realise the sort of scale and magnitude of it. And we've had a few of these games which have sort of felt sliding doors for title races and challenges for trophies down the years, and this has just got all the hallmarks of one there again. Tottenham are a team that look like they're out of the title race now, but they're still a team who can have a massive say on it by playing us in Manchester City, particularly at the sort of times they do play us. And yeah, it's going to be an absolutely huge game, and I expect Anfield to be absolutely up for it. I'm up for it as well.
It will. League and European Cup double, the thought of which is constantly in my mind, and that's how I'm getting through it. That's how I'm getting through it without feeling nervous. I'm just telling myself constantly it's going to happen. Oh, it's giving me the shivers as well, but it could happen. Let's all hope that it happens. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Thanks from Josh, thanks from me. Before we go, we've got a little plug to do, haven't we? There's loads of products on the Anfield Rack website. You can go on there and buy this lovely Sadio Mane t-shirt celebrating his mad backheel chip thing over Ben Foster at Anfield the other week, which is still one of the maddest goals I think I've ever seen. We've also got phone cases, which Josh is happily modelling.
This Trent Alexander-Arnold one, I believe there are other models of them as well.
different phone shapes and stuff as well, so go on there and see if yours is covered. But in the meantime, yes, thank you from both of us for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week, even though it's going to feel like an absolute lifetime. Let's hope the Reds do the business. Press the notification bell, subscribe, go to theanfieldrock.com/subscribe to listen to the podcast if you don't already. Do all of that stuff, it'll get your week gone a lot quicker. And enjoy the rest of your week. Up the Reds. Bye.